In this video, I'm going to introduce you to the try-catch statement. This is the last control statement that I'm going to discuss here in this course. The try-catch construction is also a bit similar to what you would use in your normal daily life. So, for example, you might say something like, I will try to learn how to program on my own, but if that doesn't work, then I will follow a course. So you can see that try-catch statements are a little bit similar to if-then statements, but try-catch statements are really about what Matlab should do if it encounters an error. And then towards the end of the video, I'm actually going to make the argument that you shouldn't use try-catch statements in most situations. There are some rare situations where I do recommend using try-catch statements. So here I have a vector. It's a 3-element vector. There are 3 elements in this vector. So of course, if we try to access the 4th element in this vector, Matlab is going to give us an error. It says index exceeds the number of array elements. Okay, so now I'm actually going to comment out this line. So I pressed Control R on my keyboard to comment out this line. So here we have a try-catch statement. So what happens here is Matlab is going to try running all of the code between try and catch. Now, if this code all runs without producing any errors, then this code does not get run and the try statement ends. However, if there is an error, if there is code that produces an error in between try and catch, Matlab will immediately stop running any of the code here and will continue with all of the code after this catch statement. Now this variable me seems a little funny because it says catch me. It's a little poetic, but in fact this variable is ME. It stands for Matlab exception. This is a structure that contains information about the error that Matlab encountered above the catch statement. So what I'm going to do now is run all of the code in this cell by pressing Control Enter. Now we already know that this should produce an error because I ran exactly the same code up here and it produced this error. So let me clear the command window here so we don't get confused. And I run this code and nothing happens. We don't get any error message, which again seems strange because if I run this code here, we actually do get an error message. So there was an error here. Matlab tried to run this code. It produced an error and then it ran the catch statement, which starts off with this Matlab exception. So I'm going to look at this Matlab exception, and it tells me that there was an error. So this is a Matlab exception, and we have, this is the identifier, the type of error, and the message is index exceeds the number of array elements. Notice that this message is exactly the same as what we got up here. And then we also get some information about the stack, and I'm not actually going to talk about this now. I'm going to introduce you to the concept of a stack in, I think it's the next section, or maybe it's the section after that. Okay, so there's a few more things I would like to tell you about how these try-catch statements work. And actually, let me start by, I'm going to add CLC over here so that every time I rerun this cell, it's going to clear the screen. Now, Matlab, even if there's an error in here, Matlab will run all the code before we get to the error message. So this is now going to print out the message hi because Matlab ran this line of code. There's no error here, of course. And then here is where the error is. On the other hand, if I move this disp command to below the error message, then we don't see the message hi. And that's because as soon as Matlab detected an error, it immediately stops any of the code afterwards and goes to this catch statement. And then the last thing that I would like to mention about how these try-catch statements work is that the first variable after this catch statement is the Matlab exception. That's the structure that contains all the information about the error message. You can have additional code below the catch statement, below this catch me statement, and that will be run if this code produces an error. So now again we see the message hi, and that's because we got an error message here. So Matlab went to the catch statement, it put the information about the error into this variable, and then it ran all of this code after catch. And then finally, I want to show you, I think I said this was the final thing, but this is the final thing. So now there's no error here anymore. And we get the answer of 4 because that's the third element. And we don't see this message because there is no error. So MATLAB didn't actually get to run any of the code after catch. Now, you might be thinking that try-catch statements are really great and you should always use them because that's the way to make your code error-free. But I recommend against using try-catch statements. The thing is, you actually want MATLAB to give you error messages because that's the way of MATLAB telling you that something went wrong, that you did something wrong. If there's a bug in your code and MATLAB is suppressing the error message, then your code could actually still be doing something horribly, horribly wrong, and you might not know about it. So that's why I generally recommend against using try-catch statements, but there are some situations where try-catch statements are really useful. One example, for example, is if you're processing a lot of data files in MATLAB. Let's say you have a bunch of code that imports data and does some processing, it does some analyses, and it saves the result. And you save a separate result file for each separate input data file. Now, that could be a case where if let's say you have 100 data files, if data file number 5 has something weird, something wrong with it, then you still want the analysis to run for all the other 95 files, and then you can print out some message saying, dataset 5 didn't run. So that's just an example. I don't want to say you should never use try-catch statements, but it is important to realize that having MATLAB give you error messages is actually a good thing. You want MATLAB to tell you when there are problems with your code. So now at this point in this section, you've learned several control statements, including if and switch and for loops and while loops and catch or try-catch. What I'm going to do in the next couple of videos is show you some applications and some exercises of applying these control statements to real problems. I will see you soon.